All right, guys. I think we're gonna start up. Cool. Yeah. So, hi everybody. I'm Adam. Part of the Pomona Student Union. We're a nonpartisan, completely student-run organization trying to increase the level of open and honest dialogue on campus. So we put on these discussions and debates hoping to present some new perspectives on issues that are important to the student body. And just to start off, I'd like to stress that these events are supposed to be important to you. That means we need input on what you want to see and what you want changed. I made that suggestion box in the back. I bled for it. And I would really love it if you guys put suggestions on the note cards and put them in. Every suggestion will be brought up in a PSU meeting, either as a revision to what's going on or as an idea for something new. So to start off, a lot of my conversations at Pomona College have revolved around how differently each of us sees the world, how much goes unseen in terms of ingrained power dynamics. And in terms of when art is used to portray the world rather than sort of pure news, whatever that is, it seems an apolitical or objective vision is impossible. So keeping in mind how important perspective is, we ask, like, what's at stake when an artist portrays the world, and what happens when lines between entertainment and information are blurred? So we brought two incredible artists from very different backgrounds who have portrayed our world in very different ways. So Chad Coleman is a film, television, and theater actor. You might recognize him more from television. All right. He's been on Criminal Minds, Burn Notice, CSI, It's Always Sunny. You might have seen him in The Green Hornet or Horrible Bosses, but I think most people recognize him from his role as Cuddy for 4 years on HBO's The Wire. If you don't know, The Wire has been described by many critics as the greatest TV drama of all time, or one of them. It's praised for really tough, realistic portrayals of urban life in Baltimore, for its uncommonly deep exploration of socio-political themes, and it defied TV expectations for avoiding big-name stars in favor of trying to get a lot of local actors, Baltimore actors, in smaller roles, and for allowing unresolved storyline conflict, trying to get real faces, real voices of the city that it portrayed. So Lee Brewer is a MacArthur Genius Grant winning theater director and playwright. He's the founding artistic director of the critically acclaimed Mabou Minds Theater Company, that along with Bob Wilson and Richard Foreman and the Worcester Group really shaped and gave impetus to American avant-garde theater. He's famously tweaked and turned classic pieces with new politics. He directed Gospel at Colonus with black gospel singers in Sophocles' Tragedy, and he did a cross-gendered Lear. I thought relevantly, because we just saw Dollhouse, Lee twisted Henrik Ibsen's Dollhouse to put it in a literal dollhouse on small scale, where a cast of dwarf men acted alongside 6-foot-tall, statuesque women while they epitomized tyrannical, dominant males. So, that's enough from me. We have two artists creating politically charged visions of our world in really different and unique ways. We have Catherine Snell moderating, and we have you guys asking questions whenever you feel like asking questions. So yeah, thanks. Let's begin.
Thank you. So my name is Catherine. I'm going to be moderating tonight's event, if you didn't already figure that out. We're going to begin with about an hour of prepared questions, and then we're going to open the floor to audience questions, so start thinking of those. Let's begin. 2013 brought with it a ton of conflict about Quentin Tarantino's purported slave narrative, Django Unchained. Many voiced concern with the fact that a white guy was directing this movie. Others lauded the work as a step forward in America's relationship with slavery. Speaking to experiences with race, class, and gender in your work, do people have ownership over certain concepts? On the flip side, if you have an affiliation with a concept, do you have a responsibility to make art about it? We'll start with Lee.
Sure. I'm gonna start with a point of view. God, for all my life, I just hated critics. And then I had a revelation, which was that artists are critics. And in a way, we're all rats in the same cage. And what I wanted to propose was an idea about looking at a piece of work where it's almost impossible to find out what's real, that what you're really looking at are subjective takes on a proposed reality in which you're saying, well, I think the world's that way, and I think the world's that way, and a critic will say, no, it's that way. The difference is that the critic doesn't have to do any art. The critic can just critique you, but the artist, in order to criticize, has to propose something new, has to make a new statement, a new idea, a new style. And in a sense, however, when you look at it from the top, it's the same idea. It's a war of concepts about reality itself. And this involves questions of style. Is realism reality? Well, I'm not quite so sure realism is reality. I think that realism is an agreement of all of us about what happens to be real. It's real if I drink a glass of water. But if I was upside down, would that be real? The water would spill, but maybe the water wouldn't spill. You never know in fantasy, okay? So I really feel that the point of view I'd like to forward and discuss is that we each have our subjective take on what's real, and we really believe in it deeply. And we either create criticism or we create art from that subjectivity. But in a sense, it's a debate. And it isn't always the critic who has the key to what's good. It's often an agreement, a public agreement, about what actually is good art. And curiously enough, what actually is good art is pretty subjective in its sense. Look at it this way. Suppose theater was half in your mind and half on the stage. Suppose you like something because you have a sense of who should win, how it should go, who is beautiful, who is ugly. And if what you're seeing from the stage projects anything close to what's in your mind, you like it. And if it is counter to what's in your mind, if somebody ugly considers himself beautiful, somebody short considers himself tall, and somebody white considers himself black, how real is that? Well, in art, one thing just might be as real as another. And what you're proposing is a new topic to agree on. Maybe reality really is upside down. I did a couple pieces where everything was in midair. Everybody flew, everybody was on ropes and wires and this and that. Scenes were staged upside down. People walked right around a proscenium this way. And somehow, I ultimately felt that the surrealism of this piece was realer than reality itself. It's not that I don't like reality. I love great realistic acting, and I love great realistic staging. However, I just hope that you can consider realism and your lives and just the idea that you're all sitting there as a style. And it could be in another style. You could all be sideways, 90 degrees this way. You could all be reverse gender. And the artist says, maybe we should look at things that way.
So, Lee, if I understand you correctly, if art is a war of concepts, then would you argue that there is no ownership over certain concepts, that it's free range, that Quentin Tarantino is free to make Django Unchained?
To a point, but I know that Chad and I agree that that point is a dangerous point. Because, for example, if people insult gender, if they insult race, if they propose a concept that they're not qualified to propose, then you're dealing on very, very touchy ground, and you have to take the consequences. And I think that Quentin is a very, very good subject matter to discuss here. In some ways, he's brilliant. In some ways, he's playing too much of a game. And I think that it's a very complex issue.
Chad?
Wow. Damn, man. I don't even want to speak now. Okay. Well, for me, the initial encounter with Django was actually the audition process. You know, everybody was running around trying to get an audition for that movie. And then, and I never got a chance to read the script. And then the next thing that happened was, for me, that jumped out, Spike Lee is like, I'm not seeing that movie. And then the whole idea of a kind of white person direct, you know, this subject matter, where, you know, at the end of the day, the story is black and white. It is. So, but it's that, again, you say, okay, now, but what perspective are you speaking from? So I'll take it back to when I was doing the play. August Wilson, an amazing playwright, wrote in his will that he did not want a white director to ever direct his plays. He passed away. His widow said, Bartlett Sher, I want you to direct the play. So there was a big brouhaha in New York about that. Now, my take on it was that we're storytellers, and the human experience, part of it, you know, yes, you have specific things that can be germane to a culture, but as the surgeons, as the human behavior surgeons that we are, I don't say that a white person can't. Now, it's not going to be a dictatorship. I'm black. I'll be in the room with Bart, you know, and I'll speak to things that if Bart had an idea, just like what Lee's saying, you know, that we should all, you know, get on the kitchen table and eat biscuits, you know, then I'm going to talk to him about the culture I grew up in, where you better not put your ass on that table, you better not put a hat on that table, you know, and these came from a very long lineage of our people who shared these ideas that carried forth. So it was, I don't have an issue with Quentin directing it. I just say, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to handle this? And if you can't walk in my shoes as an African-American male, can you sympathize, empathize, find a way to, I don't know, I don't want to say protect, but just be incredibly, I would say, I need a sensibility. I needed a sensibility. I don't mind this. You have a right to tell whatever story you choose to tell. And the fact that you chose this subject matter, okay, I get it. But now I go to the theater and I watch the movie. And I mean, I just, at the end, I had so many thoughts and feelings running through me, you know, and it makes me have to examine myself in a lot of ways. So I said, for me, I'm not really comfortable. I had a great time. I was at an arcade inside the theater. I was in an arcade, right? But we don't live in a bubble. And I couldn't help but think about what would happen if this movie was shown to young African Americans in Chicago. The idea of eye for an eye, for me, as an African-American male, has never worked in my life. I've ended up facing 10 times more conflict and struggle trying to live my life in an eye for an eye kind of way. Gratuitous violence, just the notion of the way to resolve conflict is to shoot someone is kind of old, you know? And so from a social standpoint, I was thinking about those kids, and I said, you know they're gonna get bootleg copies of this, and so what are we perpetuating? Now, for him, as a white male, what it appeared, he has every right to take on this subject matter. But the way that he did it was problematic for me because it was way too simplified. The issue of race and slavery in this country is, as Lee said, is incredibly complex. So I'd rather see someone take on this story from that perspective. I don't think there was anything to learn in our society from this movie. I really don't. You're a fantastic filmmaker, great. You could have chosen another subject and, did your whole pinball machine deal and, we could walk away and probably not have two, 3 words to say. But then I thought, if an African-American had directed this film, I think there would have been an incredible amount of backlash. Because I believe, just personally, my feeling is my community, the African-American community would have felt, it was an affront. It was like, how could you go and make this kind of salacious, kind of like drippingly violent film at a time in this country when we're wrestling with so many issues like that. Now, if you're gonna do that, I just say, are you as an artist willing to stand on the front line and talk about it? Are you willing as an artist outside of the work to try to somehow implement something in some of these, hoods and communities across the country to foster something in a young child that they don't identify with Django as a hero? Because to me, I think it's a dead end. I think it's what's already happening. You're in jail or you're dead. So I couldn't shake, I could not shake that. And then when I hear these whisperings about Quentin thinking he's black just because his stepfather was African American, and you watched a lot of so-called black exploitation flicks, I just have issues with it, and I just wonder if he's willing to have a real mature conversation about it. Not the guy from the video store who wants to just live in his own world. And that's a responsibility that goes beyond Quentin Tarantino, of course. Many others have made, but I have not seen a movie like this, I don't know if we're ready, we were ready for Dave Chappelle,
and we'll get there in a minute.
Okay, but I don't know that we were, I don't know that I found anything incredibly, I don't know if I just want to be entertained by that issue, didn't work for me.
So on the flip side, at dinner you described a childhood that didn't seem so far from what you ended up portraying in The Wire. Did you feel a responsibility to make art about those experiences? Quentin doesn't come from the background that he is portraying in his movie. Did you feel a responsibility to portray the background that you did come from?
Well, the beautiful part about The Wire is it was created by, and I really don't, white, black, it's a perspective, has nothing to do with race. You can't go to black, you can't go to white, we all come from specific places, so, I just throw that out there. But, yeah, it was I know young black males in the hood who come out of incarceration who want desperately to move on with their lives in a different way. I know these guys, they wear a veil. You can't reach them. You can't talk to them, it's always the wall is up because they're angry, they're confused, they're frustrated, there's a lot of self-hate and things of this nature going on. So when I was able to portray the role of Cuddy, and I would walk down the street, and all of a sudden, African-American males who would not speak to me, all of a sudden started to open up, started to show a vulnerability, started to be able to just share that, man, thank you for taking this on. This is my life, man. So from that standpoint, yeah, I felt, and the majority of African American males, as you all know, the penal system is inundated. So that's a lot of their story. And so I was grateful that I could collaborate with David and Ed and the rest of those amazing writers and be able to hand something back to the community that I think we could work with. Don't want to overplay the hand of art. The real worker bees are in the communities, trying to affect the change that's necessary. But yeah, if I can have a small hand in that by honestly portraying what that life is like, it meant a lot to me.
Great. So let's get to Dave Chappelle then.
Yeah.
When he discovered that the Chappelle Show's audience was largely suburban and largely white, he reacted pretty adversely, as we all know. So once you see how your audience responds and who they are, how does that change the way that you feel about or do your work? To what standard can you hold your audience when you're making a social commentary? Lee?
I'm going to dip back a second back to Django and also talk about this. Well, you take two reactions. We have very rock and roll reactions. You get a lead singer and you know the lead singer is working with an energy that I hate everybody out there, or love me, love me, love me, love me, love me. And it's down to one or the other. And these enormously strong, motivating emotions, I think, dictates the artist's position also. I think, I kind of agree with Chad completely on this. I think that Quentin, well, let me tell you a little story. I'm a lot older than Quentin, and when I was 15, an enormously important thing happened. The hit parade changed. 1 week, Perry Como was #1, and the week after, #1 was the Crows, Shaboom. Okay? Now, music and the hit parade switched from white to black. And everybody white around it, this was in the 50s, the early 50s. And everybody that I was going to high school with suddenly decided to be black was sexy. And it grew, and it grew, and it grew. And then black athletes started taking over professional sports. And black singers started taking over music. And pretty soon, black aesthetics, black dress, black culture started, particularly in New York, started taking over white culture. People changed the way they dressed. People changed the way they wore their hair. And the idea of what was hip changed race in a little bit. And I suspect that the complication with somebody like Quentin is that doing a film like this, taking these dangerous paths, was a kind of a desperate attempt to be sexy. And that it kind of flipped back on you. You can go to a point where it's just not sexy, it's ugly. And it's just not sexy, it's dangerous. It's where everybody goes that half step too far. And so I really concur with Chad on this. I think that there is danger in that film, social danger and community danger. And I think, yeah, you show it in Chicago, you show it in Africa, you show it in black communities, and someone is going to want to be Django and open up and kill 80 people on the screen. And it doesn't matter to them that it's a send-up of peck and paw, Wild West scene, where everybody dies in slow motion. That's a subtlety that passes everybody. It's the idea that strength, power, and violence and sexuality all locked together, and the metaphor for this is an Afro-American culture that's a complete myth. When I started working with Gospel of Colonus, and I started working with members of the Pentecostal Church, which I have for 30 years, and lived in virtually a black community and toured with a black company, I never felt more love, and I never felt more warmth, and I never felt more support than I had with this particular company. It was the other side of the coin. But that's not the hood. It's these two balanced things. It's the warrior culture and the church culture. And I think that Quentin bought the warrior culture, and that it's just a kind of a wannabe take. And I think that's a little bit dangerous. In fact, I think it's quite dangerous. So I'd have to.
It's an easy out. It's easy to do that, as opposed to taking it on, you know. I mean, that's really, it's, if you look at the movie, obviously, it's regressive.
Yeah.
You know? And we've seen, I mean, in real life, we have seen African Americans, not, and it didn't start that way, but if you take a look at the Black Panthers, you take a look at the ideology and rhetoric of a Malcolm X prior to, you know, his continued growth. And you'll find that eye for an eye deal. It didn't work. It doesn't work. You don't ride off into the sunset with your lady, both of y'all armed. It doesn't happen, you know? So it's just, it's a powder keg that I just don't think, you know, I don't really feel like, you know, I just don't feel like we were ready for that. Now, you said Dave Chappelle.
Yeah.
Let's go to Dave Chappelle.
Yeah.
And
Audience.
were we ready for Dave Chappelle? Was Dave Chappelle ready for Dave Chappelle? Once again, it doesn't happen in a bubble. So I was really compelled because both of Dave's parents, I believe, are professors. And so what felt like an identity crisis for him, some level of meltdown, you know, what he was up against on one level was Oprah and Bill Cosby and people of this nature calling him up saying, "What the hell are you doing?" And that was their comment, "We're not ready for this." But that wasn't the experience that I was having with it, you know. Race is absurd, you know. And I thought the way that he handled it actually spoke to that in a very smart way. Not just this gratuitous, like, just getting off on myself, you know, that I you know, felt the sense of with Quentin. I just did, and that was just my own experience. But I always thought Dave Chappelle was very, very sharp. But at the same time, when he said that these people are laughing at me, they're not laughing with me. And so he began to feel the pangs. You know, no amount of 30 million from Half-Baked, no amount of notoriety in the world could stop that thing that he felt inside that was like a rejection.
So an artist is ultimately connected to their audience.
Totally.
Yes, we don't. It really, in a lot of ways, it's not for us. You know, if I don't act in the closet, you know, you know what I'm saying. If that's all I wanted, you know, if it's not for you, you know, or if there isn't some strange collaboration or relationship or call and response, if you will, if that's not inherent in it, then, you know, on one level, it's like, what's the point of critics and what's the point, you know?
Yeah. You know, it's a lot like your search. You're looking around and you say, do you hear what I'm saying? Does he hear what I'm saying?
Right.
You hear what I'm saying? You got anything to tell me? I got something I want to tell you. Oh, you don't want to hear? Okay, well, I'll tell him.
Right.
I'll tell her. And you look one by one. You build your audience one by one. You know, you say, well, I got this thing I'm putting out. I got this energy. You like it? You don't like it. You know, it's very, you know, it's very erotic in a way. You go there and you say, this is me. Are you going to take me? No? Okay. Well, I'm going to be defensive and fuck you. Or you take me. I love you. Whoa. Come back. You know, it gets down to the basics. It really does get down to the basics. And you build your audience by trying to connect with people one by one in real time. Not on the tube, not with photos, not with this, not with a narcissistic presentation of yourself,
Right.
not with something that you know, brush stroke to put together and change the color of the photo, this and that.
Right.
But it's like you sitting there, you know, are you with me? And somehow that's the way these audiences are built. And little by little, all the way through your life, it can take 10, 15, or 20 years, you start to build a connection to the people that hear you. And they seek you out, and you seek them out. And so you want to put together a unified collective of people with a point of view that, well, it's like you got faith in each other.
So let's talk about standards for our audience briefly. To what standard do we hold our partner in this erotic relationship? How much can we ask of them? I mean, I'm thinking about The Wire and how complex the messages are there. If one goes in kind of unprepared, watching those seasons, will they get the wrong message? Does The Wire require a sophisticated audience in order for it to reap kind of positive results?
Well, the style in and of itself was one that requires, you know, that you pay attention. It's not going to be any commercial break and McDonald's and cars are getting sold, you know. It's not an episode of Law and Order where it's a nice little fixed little package deal. And so you're going to find out a lot about yourself, you know, but what it comes down to that, what do you want? You know, the Wire audience to me was looking, authenticity mattered, you know, for whatever degree that you felt like you were experiencing something unique and honest and sincere and not manipulated and not Hollywoodized, you know, that's what I think, you know, most Wire audience. And I found that some of the obscurity of it helped to form relationships. You know, boyfriends and girlfriends who knew what was happening could say, well, no, you missed it. This is what that means. This is what's happening. And so people were finding a way to either affirm notions about a particular culture or learn, or it was a fascination to somehow be able to connect and identify, you know. So, but then it's not the same with every audience. There are many in the African American community, half of which never watched the show. It's like, I'm not watching that. It's the same old hood stuff. I don't want to see that anymore. You know, I grew up with that. It's like, well, you haven't watched the show.
So, Lee, how much do you expect out of your audience?
Yeah.
Boy, everything I can get. You know, talking about The Wire a little bit and talking about, you know, a major subject at our time, you know, drug culture. I think that it might be interesting to start to see the connection between junkies and artists. In a way, one is a cartoon of the other, but they're the same. They're really the same. And an artist is an addict. It just doesn't shoot up with the same stuff. It shoots up with the energy that you get back from somebody liking your work, somebody trusting your point of view, and it makes you high. It really changes your life around, and it stabilizes you, and you feel like you can dominate the world, and you feel like everybody loves you, and then of course you crash and you have to start all over again and say, well, who loves me? But I really feel that the audience, in a way, has the drug that the artist wants, which is acceptance, which is love, and that the artist needs this desperately and is hustling for it all the time, and gets very angry and pissed off when they don't get it. And so I think of Tennessee Williams a little bit. I mean, there was a guy who his audience made him a wealthy, made him a millionaire. He had 5 or 6 absolutely brilliant successes on Broadway. And then he came out and he started talking about, the style that he really wanted to write in, which was much more abstract, which was crazier. He started writing gay characters like Felice into character plays and stuff like that, and the critics hated him, and they hated him for 20 years. And he wrote 20 or 30 plays that they dumped on that you probably never heard of, and then they killed him. And that was very possibly our greatest American playwright. And so the audience has this incredible power, like a drug, that it can make you and break you. And so it's an intricate symbiosis, a very intricate one, but so exciting that once you're hooked on an interaction with the audience, you just don't break that habit.
Well, personally for me, it started out the first time I knew that I really wanted to be an actor. Well, you train, right? And they teach you a technique, and they teach you to use things from your personal life, which is a very vulnerable thing to do. Now, I was doing a monologue from A Raisin in the Sun. I had an out-of-body experience. Everybody was like, wow, how did you do that? I was like, wow, I was lost in it, but I was still within the framework of the play. So there's that high he's talking about. Now, and fortunately, the audience happened to be in agreement, But as I went along, what I found out is that as an artist, I cannot use art to complete me, really. And I always find out, I started to find out about myself when I first felt rejection. At a point, I worked really hard on this, I was in The Tempest, and The Tempest is dealing with colonialism. I had on a loincloth, I had dreads, bare chest, and Caliban was, the voice of the native, and many African Americans in DC were like, oh God, here we go again. That brother's up there on the stage, half naked, a loincloth, and dreads on his head, and I'm saying, but I want you to focus on the story. Now, how do I get you to suspend your political, socio-political beliefs and just catch this story and, don't rape me? And I had to learn that, I was very defensive, I was very angry, and I was like, what's going on with you, man? You're asking for too much from them. So I had to shift some things. And now my daughter is an actress. So there's a pocket of insecurity that I have to wrestle with, that I can't expect acting to fix for me. And so I had to learn to change my perspective. And if I go into it knowing I am just a storyteller, that's it. If you want to shoot the messenger, hey, that's just what you needed to do. But it's my job to just tell the story and not be fixated on what it is you think or feel. And even I have actors as friends, he'll say, I'm saying, man, you know what, at the end of the day, I hear your opinion and perspective, but that's, we don't even have to go any further with that. He said, oh, yeah, right, Chad, yeah, right. like you don't care what I think. You know you care what I think, but if there's a certain growth for me as an artist that had to get to the point where it's like, it's okay to be rejected. Don't take it personal. You're telling the story, you know? And so from that point on, and I told my daughter, because she was like, she auditioned for all these performing arts high schools in New York. She goes into one and the people are like this. And she said, the people were really mean, Teddy. They didn't like me. And I said, baby, listen, I'm trying to help you with this because I don't want you to have to wrestle with that level of discomfort that I had to for so long, and that I still must manage and you know, maintain the proper perspective in this journey. So I said, you have a gift. You have a gift. There's something inside you can't explain that's connected to storytelling, not connected to a particular outcome or some level of acceptance from everyone. And, you know, with that responsibility, there's going to be a level of discomfort, but don't turn it on yourself, you know? So I had to learn to just allow you guys to, you know, because like right now I could be like, damn, that dude's over there like he's asleep, man. I don't know if you're talking. You know, I have to maintain the proper perspective and say this individual has a right to walk into this room and be as he be as he chooses to be, and I must be okay with that. And I'm not singling you out.
You know, what Ted's talking about, you know, in technical terms, is called personalization. Using yourself in a part, using something that you know. But the trick is, the great actors are kind of schizophrenic, and they have a lot of selves, and you kind of pick the self that is the key to a particular part. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that Chad spoke about when he, you know, in Raisin in the Sun, was a classic episode in Stanislavski where a guy didn't remember where he was in a part for about 10 minutes, and it was 10 minutes of genius. And what happens? What happens at that particular point is that the audience makes you feel safe. They don't have to buy everything you say. They just have to make you feel safe to go where you gotta go at that particular thing, and they'll either follow you or not, but they're not going to critique you, they're not going to walk out. They're going to say, just as Chad said, you can be who you are, and you're interesting enough for me to follow that trip that you are on, and to be with you, and to empathize with you, and to actually become you.
So let's talk a little bit more about what you called storytelling, Chad. Last night, Argo won Best Picture at the Oscars. And it had caused a fair amount of controversy because some people had been reading it as a documentary, while others were adamant that facts had been twisted for drama's sake. So does art have a responsibility to adhere to factual reality, to truth, if it's in a documentarian style? Even what liberties does the title art give you?
Well, you have to say loosely based.
Yeah. Inspired by.
Inspired by.
Inspired by.
But don't, you know, go around proclaiming it as, you know, some gospel truth, you know. I would say, that's just my personal opinion, because there's a level of manipulation there. And then you've already compromised the integrity of the film for a need to what? What is it, why would you hide that? Why is it not transparency? What are you going to lose if you just are transparent about what that experience is? Why do you not trust that you can be that transparent and still deliver something that we can all, you know, or not all, I mean, or will engage it as we do, you know? I was surprised, you know, when I saw Argo. I mean, it's like, I already know what the outcome is. I knew at the end of the movie, you knew what was going to happen. And for me, I mean, I was compelled with Ben Affleck and John Goodman, and who's the other actor?
I remember the except with Jack Goodman and Alan Alda were going to do next.
Yes,
You know, I got
that's
that.
yes. That so they were so compelling in the way that they approached the roles that they were taking me on a journey because I needed to lose sight of the fact that I knew how it was going to end. You know, so I'm really surprised with Lincoln and even Flight. For me it was like, really, Arthur? Okay. I mean, I honestly just thought, oh, that's cute. I'm sitting in the Ziegfeld in New York. It's an amazing screen. I was like, that's cute. I didn't see, to me, I would have gone, I guess I would have needed to go further. I was never shocked or.
So The Wire is done in a documentary style of film, I suppose.
Yeah.
And I know that people have approached you numerous times calling you Cuddy.
Absolutely.
So what are the ethics surrounding The Wire insofar as adhering to truth? When it kind of lays claim to truth, given its style?
Well, first and foremost, those guys were in the trenches.
Right.
They didn't just go and do a bunch of research. They were very much a part of all the information they got. They made a commitment to be in the hood. They made a commitment on a lot of levels. David being a writer, So you ask, what is his? Because you can ask yourself those questions about a journalist. Somebody that says, I have a source, and they don't have the source. Or the guy that wrote the book about addiction, and he made it all up.
A Million Little Pieces.
Yeah. So you gotta go like, what do you really want? What are you really after? Are you after fame, notoriety? You after money? What are you after? And what is it that we appreciate about the complexity and the nature of waking up every day and just living life, that when we can see it reflected back to us, we somehow grab a hold of it as real? Because inevitably, something happens inside of you. And that's when you go to the movies, that's what you want. You want to have an experience that takes you out of here, or not all the way out of there, but there's just, all of a sudden you're open and you're kind of transfixed because it's hitting all these points inside of you, And that's the experience that we have when we embody a role.
Yeah. Lee?
Sure. This idea of truth, this is tricky. And this idea of reportage or journalism, do you think the New York Times tells you the truth? Do you think Big Red, the number sheet, tells you the truth? The Post tells you the truth?
I think the Post, yes.
No, I think that you have to, here's where the audience comes in again. Even the reportage, the so-called paper of record, the Times, is owned by a publisher. And they sell papers, and they have readers, and those readers are mostly upper middle class. And so there's an upper middle class truth that this upper middle class wants to hear. And the Times is, hey, I'm going to give it to you. But the point here is that these truths are subjective, that I don't think there is even documentaries, how many different ways can you document something so it'll mean something different?
Right.
Really, this is art. You are being manipulated, and there are rules to how you're being manipulated. So-called documentary film, if it really is going to move you, it's going to move in a Aristotelian arc like this. It's going to hit a climax, it's going to come down, it's going to all through a denouement. And that's exactly the way it's going to go, and it's proven because that's a sexual rhythm. That's it. It's as simple as that. That's a sexual rhythm.
Yeah,
It's the rhythm of every major genre. So, whatever document you put together, you got to put together in a certain way. You got to sing a certain kind of song at a certain point. You got to scream at a certain moment, and and then you got to, So the point here is,
Learn something new today.
It's all manipulation.
It is.
But on top of that, the truth, I think, is this mystical thing that comes at moments throughout this when you can penetrate to the point that there is a revelation of something new. You see in some actor's face an emotion that you never expected to see. You heard a reading of a line that you never expected to hear. Surprise, surprise, surprise. There is a little trick, that you can be driving along in a car, and you could be practically going to sleep, and your brain cells will be working at 100%, 80%, 60%, 20%, 5%, and then some kid will run in front of the car and go, "Rah!" and you'd avoid the kid, and immediately 100% of your brain is working. Okay, that's surprise. And that's the way a play or a movie catches you over and over again to activate the full power of neurons receiving that particular information and gaining truth and complexity. And all those things have to be organized in a way that applies to this classic rhythm. And no matter how you document or what you say is true, it's somebody's truth. The combination of directors and actors and designers, they have put together a kind of truth, and inside that there are moments of revelation. And this, I think, is as close as we can get.
So let's wrap up this section of tonight's event with a final question. You mentioned rules to this manipulation,
Yep.
the inevitable manipulation that exists. What are these rules? What are the rules of manipulation?
Well, I would say for The
It's
Wire.
a play.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Broadway is leave them laughing. There's a rule. Don't walk on my line. There's a rule. But they're all true in a crazy sort of a way. I'm sorry, Jay, go ahead.
No, it's fine. For the whatever this elusive truth is, or fluidity of it, out of the consciousness of David and Ed, because they had lived these experiences, there was a strict gauntlet that every writer had to go through, because it starts with the words on the page. And so they had to go through the gauntlet, and whatever that meter is in them was what that writer had to engage. And it wasn't always, an incredibly comfortable experience for the writers, because no one wants to be no one wants to be called a liar, or I feel a sense of falseness in what you put on this page, and you put all your work into it. So it was we say rules. In the artist world, for me, I guess. See, I've always identified with this thing like real. It has to be real. When I started out and I watched the 8th grade play, if I didn't believe it, there was a problem. That's how it was. Now, I don't know if that's truth or reality, but it was just something in me, because it's a form, it's an art form, it's storytelling, and the trick to it is to get you to suspend your disbelief and go with me on whatever this journey is. So I was always about that, it's got to be real, man, make it real, and then I did avant-garde theater at the Wooster Group, and I realized, it's like you said, it's form, it's the form, it's the, I don't know.
But it's still your reality.
Yeah.
With those degrees, still your reality.
Oh yeah,
and
and that was all the part of the journey.
Yeah.
With me, they were like, okay, buddy, you're gonna expose something about yourself. You're not gonna be couched in what you think this character is. Chad, we need you to expose something about yourself that it almost feels like you don't know you're exposing it. Right. And Liz would do that all the time. And I would tell Liz, just say what it is, because I'm ready to go there. I want to participate in an experience that's going to give the audience these, like you said, kind of, this aha, or whoa, or damn, or whoa, what the hell, I want the audience to be able to go through all of that. So I don't want to hide, or I don't want to, I think with The Wire and all the work I've done, it's no shortcuts, no shortcuts, and no stone unturned, and we're gonna wrestle with this until we have some experience that maybe we can't describe what it is, but we all know we had it. And when we could get that going in the rehearsal room, that was the exciting part of it. To a point where it's not forced at all, and I don't know, it's adhering to something larger. I can't 100% describe it, but I know, like if two people are fighting and you walk in that room, you can feel a certain energy, right? You don't know what happened, but that energy is connecting with the energy in your body, and you're having an experience. You can sense something, and so for me, it was always about just taking off, revealing, just being as open as I could, and as willing to hear my partner, as I was to trying to come in with some fixed way of doing, it's just surrendering to collaboration and all the weird clunky nature of all of that, and then allowing whatever to birth out of that.
I want to add just a little bit to what Chad was saying, that when the moments arrive that are real, that are deep, and that are particularly vulnerable, what you always have in your mind is the fact that you are close to jumping to poetry. That there's always this second level, that it's going there, but you're just going to jump it, and you're suddenly up here, and you're suddenly in a more spiritual realm, a more mystical realm, and a more poetic realm. And a lot of times you get to the point where you just live for those jumps. You wait to see if a certain amount of surprise, a certain kind of reading, a certain kind of vulnerability, a certain kind of, a movement on stage can jump you to a moment of poetry. And that's, in a sense, I think, a super truth. Not a documentary truth, but a truth above it.
I was going to end on that note of great gravity by saying, let's have a round of applause for our two amazing speakers. But then I interrupted you instead. So, questions from the audience? Yeah.
Chad, you describe yourself as a messenger, as an actor, and you say, and you said you yourself you wanted to try out for audition for Django. Do you hold? I guess my question is, do you hold the actors in that film, Jamie Foxx and everyone else, culpable in any sense for the half step too far, as Lee said, that film went? Or does the culpability lie, in your view, solely with the writer and the director and those who take kind of managerial roles in portraying the art?
What I felt was the body of work that Kerry Washington, Samuel L. Jackson, Jamie Foxx had put together, the body of work that they put out there allowed them to want to engage this subject matter in a different way. So they wanted to take this kind of fanciful trip with it. You can, I think they just felt that they had a track record that, that taking this, if they thought it was a risk, I'm not sure. I just felt like they was like, oh, this is hip and cool and different, man. You're gonna take on slavery like this, That's kind of what I felt in some of the things I heard from Jamie Foxx. And I never heard them, intimate what I'm talking about, the kind of social political stuff, I have profound respect for the work they've done, So I don't know their reasoning behind it, But I just remember just feeling like these guys have got a hell of a track record, and this is an opportunity for them to kind of take a different route, you know, and that mattered in their art in the artistic body. It mattered, you know. So that was like a cool kind of. I mean, not to say it wasn't uncomfortable, because it was for Kerry, you know, the stuff she had to do, and even at the NAACP Awards, Jamie was saying that like when she had to do that nude scene, you know, it was a tough day on the set, and he started singing this gospel that a lot of us know, no weapon formed against us shall prosper. So, you know, there was a lot resonating on that set. But I think at the end of the day, it feels to me like they were like willing to take this flight of fancy, you know? And I don't know that I don't know how much they wrestled with, you know, the repercussions of it. But at the same time, Sam Jackson's role for me was just, I mean, I laughed the whole time. I thought he was hilarious, you know, because it was sickeningly funny, you know. But I didn't have a problem with the performances, you know.
Yeah, I want to second that. I mean, I was blown away by Samuel L. Jackson in that. I think that, to me, now that may be my kinky point of view and my warped reality, but I felt that Samuel got to poetry on that. And it reminded, you know, I've never known a smarter take than he made in that film. I saw one that was similar to it. There's a play by Bertolt Brecht that I saw at the Berliner Ensemble all the way back in the 70s with a great actor named Eckhard Scholl, who was the lead actor there, in which he played Arturo Ui, which is a Hitler figure. But Arturo Ui was played as a clown. And that was very dangerous in East Berlin at that particular time, to play Hitler as a clown. You know, this murder of millions of people. And I remember one scene where he was in a Miami hotel and sitting with his back to an audience. He started giving a speech. And, well, I got to preface this with, he learned how to talk as Hitler. And it was really funny because he got a Shakespearean actor to teach him. And the Shakespearean actor would go like this. And Eckhart would go like this, and he would cover his balls with his other hand. And then the Shakespearean actor would go like that, and Hitler would switch and cover his balls with his hand, you know. And then he sat on this couch and he started giving this Hitlerian harangue, and he started bouncing on the couch. And the palm tree started bouncing, and the couch started bouncing, and he ended up the whole sequence with this fabulous Lazzi, in which he turned the double flip over backwards and landed like this. Totally clown. Well, Samuel's great choices, for example, makeup that went back to Disney's Uncle Remus with that white hair and stuff like that. And as I was telling Chad earlier, it reminded me that here's a perfect, talk about something that will make you think. You start to think the Samuel Jackson character could be a neo-colonial head of Guinea-Bissau right now, who had learned how to play it the white way and was taking over a country, was killing a few million people, mining diamonds, selling weapons, and the whole thing, and had it all set. And it was incredible social insight into this particular psychology of how this particular very, very clever black man picks the white way, decides to go all the way. He would have taken over the plantation. You know, he would have killed everybody, white, black, on the plantation. You could tell. It was, I think, a really clear political statement. And I think that Samuel did a great piece of work right there. And so I would say that that's one of those epiphanies in that film. There are terrible things that are dangerous, but Samuel taught me something. He really taught me something about behavior and about race and about the movies too. I mean, look, he steals this Disney image. Disney wouldn't dare show, you know, Uncle Remus now. You know, for a rabbit, all that shit. Oh, come on. You know, but Samuel grabbed all of this stuff and turned it around and showed me a potential dictator in the making, you know.
Well, and I would say, if you watch Roots, though, go back and watch Roots and watch Lou Gossett Jr.'s performance, and then you'll see another, you know, just razor sharp type of deal. And you know, it's all about, well, how do I negotiate my environment, you know? And what type of behavior do I adopt for where Samuel Jackson's character chose self-preservation, you know, overall to me, you know, at the end of the day, nothing mattered more than survival. So in order to survive, I must align myself with, you know, with the Leonardo's character. Where's the power source and how am I gonna stay alive? And so he aligns himself with it and, you know, he adopts all the necessary behavior and attitudes that are gonna keep him in good standing. But, you know, it comes at a cost, because Django's gonna come and shoot both of your legs off. And the kingdom is gonna be blown up at the end, you know. I know, I would only say the real truth is, you know, okay, what really happens to that Sam Jackson character? Nothing. Nothing. He's alive and well today. Ask Clarence Thomas.
Our second question over here.
Can we go back to A Million Little Pieces? Because James Frey didn't fabricate it as he was writing it. He originally wrote it as a novel, and then no publisher accepted it. So then he said it was a memoir, went on Oprah, and on the show, live, Oprah called Larry King, I think it was, and said, I don't have the quote, but it doesn't matter whether or not it's true, it's just the feeling I had and the tears I cried while reading A Million Little Pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, he embellished the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
How does that change the artistic quality?
What happened to him? What happened to his career? What happened? So, okay, so I'm glad you had that experience, Oprah. But look what happens though. See, without integrity, you know, at the end of the day, without integrity, a writer is only as good as it, you know, especially you profited by saying, you know, saying that moved many more people than your fictionalized story. The fact that it was true resonated differently in the people. You understand what I'm saying? So whatever that relationship between this is based on, and all of a sudden you've got sales going like crazy, or did it happen first because Oprah said, this is it?
Oprah generated it.
Right, but he still was dealing out of, so right there on Oprah, he could have said what? This is not, guys, I gotta be honest with you. This is not it's not what I purported to be. I believe there's value in it, but I don't want to profit by manipulating you to that degree. Because there are too many people suffering from addiction this was kind of hope for them that, you know, that felt betrayed.
Betrayal is a big word here.
Yeah.
If you go across the line and start to betray the people who had faith in you, I think you're in deep shape.
Right.
Joseph?
I wanted to ask you guys about your art in the audience and sort of when you're doing the art for yourself and you're doing the art for the audience, and at times when it can get unbalanced, how have you dealt with that? Where you feel like you've gotten your audience and they enjoy your art, but something in you changes and the art that you want to produce changes, and sort of what do you do when you find yourself conflicted with the decision of how do I communicate to these people that enjoy what I do that things might be changing, or how do you communicate to yourself like, is this change like really happening within me, or like in that sort of realm?
It's a great question.
Well, there's a couple of different dynamics involved in that personally. One is people identify, like they call me Cuddy, you know. So now I have people who completely identify with me as Cuddy and that level of art, but they don't know about the Chad that's on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, or, you know, the Chad that does a Fox sitcom. And in all reality, it's a tricky deal, because I know some actors who will only negotiate a role from the standpoint of protecting an image that their audience already identifies them with.
Right.
And they'll compromise the play or anything else, or at least what many of us perceive that the playwright intended, will not do it because they don't want to offend, or they don't want to be off-putting to those people who identify with them and keep their commercial life viable. You know, I've seen that happen, and
This is the star syndrome.
yeah. And so for me, like having started with Stanislavski, you know, and the understanding of what he was trying to do with those people, he was fascinated with human behavior and trying to understand why when you get up here, you can't be as you are out there. That was the whole, you know, a lot of it. Like, I need authentic human behavior. You people, what is it that you're doing? You know, this is not going to help us really. It's going to more so isolate an audience. So the play is always the thing. You know, the art in the play, I'm never really negotiating it from the standpoint of, is my audience. I'm just gonna move in a space where I am able to tell these stories and allow these gifts to come out, and you know, the audience is gonna do with it what they will. I don't really get to, you know, too caught up in that aspect. Do you understand?
I just want to add come from another side on that. That sometimes it's really frustrating. As a writer, I was writing a certain way in the 60s to the 70s, and then I changed and I wrote differently. And then I changed again in the 90s, and now I'm writing a third way. And I actually think I'm improving. I actually think this is better, this is funnier, this is tighter, and this is hipper, what I'm doing now. However, many people would prefer that I wrote like I did in the 70s. And this is going back to Williams. People wanted Tennessee to write The Glass Menagerie forever. You know, they never wanted him to go past that one. And I found that it's tremendously frustrating. I kind of wanted to say, yeah, but this is better, come along with me, you know, go with me. Yes, I love to entertain audiences, but I want to entertain you the way I now feel entertainment works, what I now think is funny. I want to tell those jokes, not what I thought was funny when in the 70s, you know. I'm playing it a little less safe now. I didn't want to be as polite as I was then. I was more scared then. And so I really feel that there's frustration built into that, because you want to entertain and you want to be yourself, but as yourself changes or grows, no matter whether it's defined as growth or not, as you change, some people come with you and some don't, and you just have to face that.
Yeah.
Final question.
Somebody's got one. You guys are good.
Right there. You said, should I ask or not? Go ahead. Go for it. Doug.
Question?
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask from a subhead, like the sub, I might be a bit redundant, but I guess one thing that I'm coming back to when you guys were both speaking was there's this sort of interaction between what the art is produced and it keeps the sort of receiver audience is sometimes pure cure. Like there's a revelation that the art and the participant both share, or maybe even yourself or a group you're putting art with. And does the fact that the audience is often positioned as a consumer of entertainment,
That's a great question. Because I always felt like back in the, you know, the 50s and 60s and, you know, in theater and the audience was so much more informed, you know? The audience, a lot of them were at home reading the play before they came to the theater.
And they were really listening, they were
Right.
listening.
Yeah. And now we live in a soundbite kind of world, you know, and a fast food kind of deal. So there are times when, you know, it's just painfully obvious that this is kind of going over their heads. They're not catching this, and there's nothing I can really do. You know, hopefully we get to the theater early, read the playbill, and read some of the information inside of it that'll give you some sense of how to watch if you're not patient enough and willing to listen. And I just think I think the audience, a lot of the audience, the theater going audience today, just has a tough time listening because at home you can rewind. I didn't hear that. You know, you can put it on pause, your DVR. You can watch TV the way you want to. You know, I mean, you can be entertained the way you want to. So going to the theater still requires a certain muscle that you have to exercise, and sometimes it's really hard. It makes people sleepy. So no, you have to concentrate. You know, concentrating is tough sometimes. You know, and then you got people who are working like crazy all the time. You're tired. You know, but so I just feel like the audience. It's up to you to want to be, quote unquote, a good audience member. You know, it's entirely up to you. If you want to kind of, we're going to see this play. Who's the playwright? Hey, why don't we okay, now we can use the internet for this. Let's look this playwright up. Let's see what he's done. Let's get, you know, it's up to you to get a sense of what it is, you know, to be as informed and as present in the experience with us as possible, you know?
Yeah, good question. I mean, where is everybody's heads going these days? I honestly do feel I'm less in touch with audiences now than I was in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. I felt they were listening more clearly. I felt what I had to say was, you know, the energy was coming back at me in a more vital way. And then I thought, well, I had an idea, and I'm working on the biggest piece I've ever done, which will probably be my last really big piece. But it's a kind of inspired by Stand Up. It's the little Quentin, from Dante's. It's called La Divina Caricatura, and it's Dante is a comic book, and it's all puppets. It's bunraku puppets, which are the Japanese puppets that are 3 feet tall, and there's 3 puppeteers for each puppet. And it's got a band and 3 singing groups, and there's music all the way through it. And it's about a junkie in love with a dog, and a dog in love with a junkie from the dog's point of view. Dog named Rose, very romantic dog. And there is there's a gay rabbit in it, named Butch Bunny, and you know, there's a heavy dude called Broadway, who's kind of a Rasta, and it's got some greatest puppets. You know, I'm working with most of Basil Twist puppeteers, and they're just wonderful. And I've loved puppets ever since I saw the bunraku in Japan. But what the point here is it does try to say something. It's about a pilgrim's progress of humanity into animated feature films. Like we're all becoming animated feature films. And the halfway house between being a human being and an animated feature film is being a puppet. And then you go from being a puppet to just being 2-dimensional on a screen. And I actually think that I caught a little truth in this one, and I think that that's kind of it. And so all of these people are in a rehab center called the Institute for the Science of Soul, run by a mystical cow named Sri Moon. And, you know, and all of these puppets are worried about deteriorating the animations, and they're doing the 12-step cure, you know? So,
That's awesome.
and so I honestly, I don't know who's gonna follow me into this piece, but I know I'm gonna go dead broke on it because it's the most expensive piece I ever got, and it's got the most people, and I don't care.
Can you take my likeness? Can I be one of the puppets?
All right, well, before I wrap up, I just want to say that for those of you interested in getting behind the scenes on PSU, our application is going to be coming out towards the end of the week on our website. But more importantly, a big thank you to our amazing speakers and to the audience.
Thanks, Catherine.